This is an RNZ podcast.
It is 25 to 10 here on RNZ National.
Never come across a snake.
Okay.
Oh, I might have
okay.
seen one.
No, it's fine if you haven't.
Now I feel like I can't remember.
No, I was just asking. A surprising number of all three of our quizzes had some sort of interaction with a snake.
I don't know where you'd come across one around here.
Well, on the beach.
Nope, not going there.
Going there.
I've seen an eel.
Yeah. I mean, they're not the same. It kind of looks...
They're both gelatinous
Yeah, that's true.
and long.
How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good. We shall start this week's Midweek Mediawatch in a familiar place with the NZME update. And you tapped into your cultural self for this very moment, didn't you, Hayden?
Yeah, we've done this so regularly that I came up with a theme song for it. I mainly came up with a theme song for it, honestly, because I knew it would annoy Colin Peacock.
Yep.
But still, I came up with a theme song and I asked listeners to remix it. And you know what?
What?
One did. So this is from Elaine Morland in Christchurch.
Hey, what's happening at the Hero? What's going on News Talk ZB? It's the NZME. It's the NZME. It's the NZME update. NZME update. RNZ's me.
Now, as you can tell, Elaine thought the original didn't really have the appropriate gravitas.
It had gravitas.
It definitely did have quite a lot of gravitas. I feel almost that the segment won't live up to what that
like
music would indicate.
Hayden Donnell meets Hans Zimmer.
Yeah, I'd say so. It's unless I felt like it was an old school sort of 90s news intro almost.
Yeah. Well, that was good. Thanks, Elaine. All
right.
right.
Elaine has a band called Starlight Masquerade, by the way, which is on Bandcamp. So
cool.
Shout out. This is the kind of shout out you get if you do remix my songs for the radio.
So what is happening at NZME then?
Well, first, Emil, I thought that I'd actually break a little bit of news on this show. I do like to break news here sometimes because this show, it has a lot of lovely interviews, a lot of lovely chats. With that snake doctor just there. It's no checkpoint though, is it?
It's no. We don't often break break news.
No checkpoint with Lisa Owen. So I was tipped off this week that NZME appears to be employing some people, digital producers that are in the Philippines, and staff at the company appear to have learned this almost by accident, by having to email people in the course of their day and finding out that actually it's their colleague and they're stationed in the Philippines. So I went to clarify this with NZME to say, hey, are you guys employing a bunch of people in the Philippines? And they emailed me back a statement that they attributed to a spokesperson. It said NZME is an innovative, future-focused business and we're continually looking at ways we can work smarter, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes that means outsourcing certain functions or bringing in external support where it makes good business sense and helps us operate more efficiently. Now, that didn't answer my question per se, but I think that I can safely take that as an admission that they are employing people from the Philippines.
Digital producers. Is that your description or the description that people at NZME have given to you?
That's a literal job title that I saw on LinkedIn.
It's a job title, right, okay. And so
one of the guys.
What do these digital producers do?
Well, a lot of it, from what I'm told, is relative, kind of, I don't want to call it dog's body work, maybe a little bit mundane. So it's not high-level editorial decision-making. It's doing stuff like taking wire copy. They have an agreement with the Daily Telegraph in the UK, for instance, maybe taking some of that wire copy and uploading it onto the website, uploading stories that have been edited already. So that kind of stuff that used to be done, from what I understand, in-house by people in New Zealand, now being outsourced overseas.
Okay, so it's non-editor level stuff, but existing staff... Well, how do existing staff feel about this?
I think there's a bit of disquiet. Now, I haven't surveyed every NZME staff member. Usually I would, of course, survey every single NZME staff member before talking to you, Emil. I didn't have time this week, but it seems a disquiet amongst some people is that this wasn't communicated. that they found out by accident, and they're dealing with these people on a professional level that they didn't even know worked for the company. So it's kind of the lack of transparency that bothers some people.
There is, I suppose, as well, the question of why this is actually happening. I expect cost cutting is going to be in there somewhere.
Yeah, you'd think, you don't know, but that you'd think that the people in the Philippines are being paid a little bit less money than the people in New Zealand were. And that raises some questions as well, because NZME's gone through these rounds of redundancies recently. A lot of the people that were let go were in the digital team. And so do any of these producers' responsibilities cross over with some of the people that were let go? What are the legalities around that? There are questions like that. Now, that's something that I did actually put to the Union E2 this afternoon. They haven't got back to me just yet on that, but I'm sure they will have a view on it as well.
And while all of this is going on, there have been quite a few developments at the in the so-called coup, the board coup.
The billionaire coup.
The billionaire coup, as it's being described by some at the top of the company.
Yeah, that's Jim Grennan, the Canadian billionaire that lives in Takapuna in Auckland now, bought 10% of NZME, wants to take over the board, install himself as board chair, and install 3 handpicked candidates on the board. That's the cliff notes on this one. Now, he's been trying to force out the existing board, and the top dog there, the person at the top, Barbara Chapman, chairwoman, has said she is resigning, and she adds her name to David Gibson, another board director who resigned in mid-April. But with Barbara Chapman leaving, there is a fishhook here. She says she won't go unless her preferred successor is named as board chair. That's according to the MBR at least. And that successor is not Jim Grennan. It is former National Party Minister Stephen Joyce.
So she's saying, I will resign, but only if you name the person I want to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who?
And if you don't do that, then I won't resign.
That's it. If Stephen Joyce doesn't get it, and I suppose maybe if Jim Grennan does get it, then she's not going willingly. This is the implicit threat of manoeuvring that's going on here. I think Duncan Grieve on News Talk ZB called it a deft bit of manoeuvring, and it does seem that way, because Stephen Joyce could be a compromise candidate that is acceptable to both the other shareholders who are dissatisfied with the company's performance right now, but aren't as vehement in their views as Jim Grennan, and it will satisfy potentially people on Jim Grennan's side of the debate as well, because
successful background in radio as well, Stephen Joyce.
Mainstream political figure. He is on the right, which obviously a lot of the people that Jim Grennan aligns himself with are, and it seems like he is as well. He walks in those circles. So it seems like maybe this is a compromise that is being worked out here that might be acceptable to everyone and will end the kind of nascent civil war that's going on at the board level.
So where does this leave Jim Grennan's plans?
Well, you have to say that a lot of the things that he wanted, and he said that he wanted in his many letters that he sent to the board and to the union and all these things, are actually coming to pass. Now, the existing directors, 2 of them are going, including the chairperson. He wanted them gone, they're going. The Herald's video project, I've talked about this, but they want to create a live news channel that broadcasts all morning. I haven't heard much about that. That was meant to launch in the first half of this year. The first half of this year is almost up. I don't know what's happening with it. Maybe it's up in the air now. Jim Grennan's raised skeptical noises, or made skeptical noises about that as well, recently as well. Another of Jim Grennan's asks was that the Herald and News Talk ZB editor, that they would be elevated to executive level at the company. Now, that person, Murray Kirkness, recently demoted, no longer at executive level. He's been raised up again. So these are a lot of the things that Grennan has asked for have come to pass.
Well, the things that he sort of recommended, right? But I suppose the big one is I would like to be the chairman of the board, and
exactly.
there is some
I would
manoeuvring
like to be
to stop that from happening, right?
Control. So maybe it's this, look, I feel like I'm going out on a limb. I'm not reporting here. I'm just speculating based on what I see of what's going on. But maybe it's a matter of giving him what he wants on a practical level in terms of internal changes at the company that are mostly palatable to everyone and actually are quite valid criticisms and decent suggestions. But at the same time, there's real concern about him taking control of the company, because the board has said publicly, explicitly on the record, that they are worried that he is interested in controlling the newsroom rather than the actual financial success of that is his priority rather than the financial success of the company. So they are trying to make these changes that he's criticised about how the way that the company runs without giving him actual control, because they're worried about that and they're worried about the future of editorial independence.
Also, some good news for Jim Grennan and his supporters in the legal? I don't know. I guess it's the legal sense, right?
Yeah, it is. Well, yeah, it's the law.
Yeah.
It's to do with the law. I don't really know the full breadth of legal, but it seems legal to me. They've been cleared by the investment takeovers panel of a code breach. I'm not a particularly expert in this area, Emil, but the determination from the investment takeovers panel is that Grennan decided to buy shares in NZME after speaking to Can Iwi Capital's Troy Bowker in August 2024. They had to decide whether actually the initiative that he then bought 10% of the company, whether this amounted to collusion that was in breach of the takeovers code. Apparently that threshold wasn't reached, and this seems to hinge on the fact that he was an associate of Can Iwi Capital, which owns, I think, 1.6% of the company or something like that, but he didn't have 20% of the company's share. He wasn't an associate of shareholders with 20% or more of the company's shares at the time that he bought his shares. So it was kind of, he didn't reach the threshold. It seems that is a determination.
All right, that's just about the NZME update for this week. But before you move on, you wanted to give a shout out to some of the reporters covering this story.
Yeah, shout out Shane Curry. This is a difficult one. Shane Curry is the media insider at the Herald. He's been very dogged on this, and he's been quite detailed. And he's done enough reporting that he's actually got some relatively insipid statements from his own company, and even got a no response from them. Okay, that's a bit of a rite of passage, putting questions to your own company, of which you are apparently an editor at large, and still getting no response. We've all been there, Shane. It's okay. Without that. Besides that, I'd say that the MVP really of the story has been Bridget, not even in New Zealand. Bridget Carter at the Australian seems to consistently break the news on this stuff. She's got real contacts inside the shareholders of NZME. Broke the news that Barbara Chapman's stepping down, so she has broken a bunch of stuff on this. I'm quite admiring of how quickly and regularly she gets out updates on this one. So maybe she does have contacts over in Australia, because a lot of NZME's biggest shareholders are over there.
Another big story this week: government ministers using their personal emails, but her emails. Yeah,
we got an email scandal in New Zealand. This is from Mikey Sherman, Tom Day at One News. They revealed that Education Minister Erica Stanford used her personal Gmail account to send hundreds of messages back and forth with contacts and constituents. And it was one of the main focuses of the Prime Minister's post-cabinet briefing on Monday, where Sherman caught him out a little bit with this question.
Are you comfortable with how often Erica Stanford is using her personal email to conduct ministerial business?
Well, again, my office has spoken with her. I understand it's been very few occasions.
These two folders contain hundreds and hundreds of pages, emails and documents, all relating to Erica Stanford's private Gmail account. Does that sound like very limited instances?
Well, again, as I said, I'm very relaxed about it.
Wow, some snappy editing there.
Like the clunk of the folder going down on the desk.
Some nice visuals as well. But I know that there are some people who feel this has been blown out of proportion a wee bit.
News Talk ZB's Mike Hosking thinks this has been way too much. He's among the critics, and so here he is on his morning show.
Somewhere within TVNZ there are pieces missing, the pieces that connect their thinking and news judgment to those of us out here in the real world. Their sense of what is big and important and in need of a two-part blockbuster is broken. In a country, and indeed world, where any number of large, complex and life-changing events are happening all around us continually, Erica and her admin isn't one of them.
And he went on to say this.
As a fellow media practitioner, I'm increasingly embarrassed at an industry I've spent my working life in, watching it crumble as judgment, professionalism and audience understanding goes down the gurgler.
The gurgler.
Down the gurgler.
What do you make of that criticism? Do you feel that the reporting was a bit overblown?
I get where he's coming from, that maybe this wasn't the most world-changing story of all time. It's not going to bring down the government, but it certainly is a story. It involved budget-sensitive documents. It has security implications. I remember a few years ago, Mediaworks got hauled over the coals. I think they leaked it was a Reserve Bank decision at the time, and there was talk about, because of the sensitive information that had been mishandled, that they wouldn't do budget lockups for journalists anymore. So
I remember,
so
yeah.
there was the government is very sensitive when the media mishandles this kind of information. So why is it then inappropriate for the media to report on the government potentially mishandling this information? I don't think that it's in any case indicative of the disintegration of the media industry as a whole. And for sure, Mike Hosking, prominent radio hosts, can not give it too much weight. That's fine, but that doesn't mean that the media shouldn't report on what has been a breach, it appears, of the Cabinet Manual.
Perhaps it's being played down because there is a somewhat relatable element to it. Like we've all made an email mishap at some stage or another.
Yeah, and I think Erica Stanford's excuses as well, that the printer wasn't working.
Right.
She needed to forward it to her Gmail so that the documents could get printed out. That's relatable as well. Printers are horrible. Everyone hates a printer. But look, I didn't think that Mikey Sherman's story was over-egged or anything. It reported the facts pretty straight. It didn't say heads must roll. It just called the situation pretty messy. And yeah, maybe a lot of people think it's relatable. I think Mike Hosking's producer, Glenn Hart, was really one of those.
I've got 3 main email addresses I use. And sometimes it does get a little bit confusing because sometimes I want to be associated with Mike Hosking with my signature. It's mostly my signature. It affects my signature as to which email address I use. Because from some of the email addresses, I'm Mike Hosking's button pusher. And from other signatures, there's no mention of Mike Hosking at all.
You can understand, he says, why I wouldn't want to mention Mike Hosking.
Friendly fire for Mike Hosking.
Really tough stuff. He often comes under fire from Glenn Hart.
And Mike Hosking was not the only one at News Talk ZB poo-pooing this story. Heather Duplessis-Allen didn't think much of it either.
Yeah, not keen on it either. But she actually, perhaps inadvertently, gave it an extra life when she had Finance Minister Nicola Willis onto her show on Tuesday. And this is how that interview began. Quite awkwardly, I thought.
Do you send any of your emails to your Gmail account by any chance?
Look, I don't think so. To be honest, I don't send many emails at all. I've got an incredible team of people who do that for me. I tend to send the odd text or WhatsApp message, and that's about it.
Really? How do you get away with not doing emails?
Well, I do them very rarely.
That doesn't sound confident.
Email? What's email? Sometimes I venture into the land of emails, but there are people doing it almost sounds, I have to say, Emil, there, that maybe Nicola Willis might have been using her personal email from time to time. And that would be quite a potentially defamatory allegation if actually the next day she hadn't admitted using her personal email from time to time. RNZ reported that both Nicola Willis and Chris Bishop admitted using their personal emails for government business. You kind of maybe think that maybe she was trying to...
plausible deniability kind of thing?
Yeah, walk around that one a little bit. Email, I've sometimes seen them.
Well, there you go, Heather Duplessis-Allen, well done.
Well, she broke that news.
She broke that news, or perhaps inadvertently.
Yeah, sometimes you get the scoop just by wandering into it.
Let's talk now about media job news. Former Herald political editor Claire Trevett and former TVNZ reporter Nicole Bremner are joining the police, Hayden.
Yes, Claire Trevett, a big name in politics reporting, great politics commentator and reporter. She will be attached... not physically, just professionally, to Commissioner Richard Chambers, I believe, and so she will be representing his interests. And Nicole Bremner will be a senior media advisor.
And, is this good news? Good news for journalists to have a couple of their own in the police, as it were?
Yeah, well, at least a few commentators seem to think so. The aforementioned Shane Curry, he thinks that having 2 experienced recent journalists join the police will give hope to some of the reporters that the public relations brick walls of recent years will be demolished. The Post said it heralds a new era for police media relations. Look, call me a bit of a cynic, Emil. Maybe this will come to pass. Maybe there will be a new era, but it seems to me that we've had decades of good journalists joining the PR industry, and it hasn't exactly resulted in information flowing like rain from the sky just yet. Instead, it's tended to result in former journalists using their knowledge of the industry to clamp down on tough scrutiny for their new bosses. I don't. Maybe Claire Trevor. She's a great journalist and was great to deal with. Maybe it will be different, but that has been the way it has been.
You could join the police as well as a police officer, couldn't you?
Oh, I did. Oh, that's right. I did the entry exam.
You did the exam because there was
I'm at least very close, I think, to being able to join the police college. So that is an option. You do have to keep your options open in the media at the moment.
Yeah, you did the fitness tests and wrote about it for the spin-off. Very good piece, I thought.
Oh, thank you so much.
4 minutes to 10 is the time. Let's talk a bit about the working group, a popular politics podcast, which is shutting down.
Yeah, very sudden shutdown. The working group featured an odd couple, you'd have to say. Old school leftist Martin Bomber Bradbury and the libertarian columnist for Stuff, Damien Grant. Too odd of a couple, it does seem. Bomber Bradbury, he's written a blog calling out Damien Grant for calling off the show and, in his eyes, or Bomber's eyes, shutting down his freedom of speech.
And what is Bomber Bradbury's argument?
So just reading the blog, it seems that Damien Grant, through his company Gravity Management, sponsored the working group, and in his blog, Martin Bradbury intimates that Grant increasingly used that leverage to try to shape coverage on Bradbury's website, which is called the Daily Blog. So this is not the working group, this is his personal website, but obviously affiliated with the working group, and they host some of the working group's YouTube videos on their YouTube and that kind of stuff. So Grant seems to have complained about Bradbury criticising Stuff political editor Luke Malpass for his links to the New Zealand Initiative, for being too harsh on the New Zealand Initiative chair Oliver Hartwich, and then he pulled the plug on the podcast before it kicked off this year, saying he just doesn't have it in him for the emotional weight that it puts on him.
And Martin Bradbury sees this cancellation as an affront, an ironic affront to free speech from
libertarian. Yeah. How could you do this? How could you kind of cancel me and this product that we did together for my speech? And to be fair, yes, Grant does back organisations like the Free Speech Union, and they are always talking about people not suffering professional consequences for their speech. And there's probably something in a libertarian cancel culture critic withdrawing from a podcast because its host is too outspoken. But in the end, you always have to say that free speech doesn't mean that people aren't obliged to, that people are obliged to just stand there and accept your speech mutely, and that they can't react to it, and that their freedom of speech actually entails the right to forgo having to deal with your speech anymore, to make their own choices. And maybe it's Damien Grant exercising his freedom of speech by choosing not to be on this podcast anymore.
Did you listen to the working group?
Only soft. I listened to clips.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed it.
It was actually a lively listen.
Really lively listen. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were in a scandal last year, weren't they? I did commentate a little bit about it. The Matthew Hooton, and he was very. It was broadcast lightning, his rant about Don Brash, and he then called Damien Grant a dickhead during that rant, I have to say. So maybe this was one of the fights that Damien Grant was referencing had exhausted him emotionally.
We have about a minute left. Should we finish with World Press Freedom Rankings? New Zealand's gone up from 19th to 16th, which is good news.
Huge win for us there, 19th to 16th, out of 180. So we're right near the top, and we're performing very well per capita. But I have to say, Emil, that this ranking rise is less to do with our own amazing excellence. Our actual score hasn't gone up that much. It's more like how, remember that Australian ice skater Stephen Bradbury who won
doing
the Olympic?
A Bradbury,
we're doing a Bradbury. All of our opponents have fallen over, and we've skated on through to the finish line. Okay. So there's major challenges everywhere. More countries are cracking down on press freedom. Palestine is obviously a huge threat to the press right now. Nearly 200 journalists have been killed by the IDF. That's mentioned in this report. Parts of the Middle East and Africa are also clamping down on freedom. So, yes.
And I see America dropping to, the US dropping to 57th place.
And that's not because of Trump, apparently. That's because of its vast news deserts where there's not even any local news. There's just nothing.
Thank you, Hayden.
Thank you very much, Emil.
That is Hayden Donnell with Midweek Mediawatch.